Hey, Dave Brewster here with an episode of Chordplay, and this is the Chords of Steve Stevens, and I've had some requests to feature Steve Stevens, and I'm just kind of finally getting around to featuring him on the channel. But most people know Steve from working with Billy Idol, since the early 80s, and definitely they had a lot of history together, working together in the 80s and then like the early 90s. And then he kind of broke off and started releasing some solo albums. He also worked with Terry Bozzio and Tony Levin on a side project. Recorded with Michael Jackson, recorded with Vince Neil, and a whole bunch of other people. But Steve's a very interesting guitarist. You have elements of rock and jazz and classical, also flamenco music, and interesting rhythms and riffs and great leads, all these crazy effects and stuff. Especially in the early days back in the 80s, he had these crazy, robotic, almost science fiction sounding effects like in his chain. And he'd whip out these weird, special effects and stuff. It almost sounded like a keyboard, but it was his guitar. Now, as I said earlier, most people associate Steve with Billy Idol because they worked together, and that was kind of their rise, to fame and popularity, working together. And then when he split off, and kind of worked on, some of his solo materials, Flamenco, Go-Go, I think was one of his albums, Atomic Playboys, and some of his solo, releases. He really did kind of, showcase all these different things that he could do. Flamenco music and acoustic guitar things and electric guitar. And for those of you that don't realize it, actually the theme from Top Gun, that's Steve Stevens on guitar. Very famous, famous movie and a very famous guitar theme and, theme from that film. And I actually did see, I've never seen Billy Idol in concert, but I did see Vince Neil and, with Steve Stevens. That was back in the 90s. And they opened for Van Halen. That was in Atlanta, Georgia, of all places. But I technically did see, Steve Stevens with Vince Neil. I don't really remember the concert. It was super packed and it was really loud. I don't really remember anything that stood out. I just remember they came out and played, and everybody was just anticipating Van Halen. I mean, they were chanting Van Halen as soon as Vince Neil started. So it really was dominated by Eddie, at that concert. But I do remember taking the time to really notice that's Steve Stevens up there, and I was watching him, like a hawk. The opening, that was the interlude or bridge to Eyes Without a Face from the Rebel Yell album. And that's when the song, finally starts rocking when that part comes in. And it's something like this. Basically sliding, from nowhere into that E power chord. And he basically starts banging on that. And you're going to slide that down to a D power chord. He's also separating the root from the top part of the chord. So you don't really want to play that E power chord full. You want to separate, like that. You don't really want to play the full chord. Separate the notes. And then slide down to that D power chord, and then you're going to move from a D power chord to an implied D major 7 right there. Something like that. And that's one thing about Steve's rhythm style you'll notice in a lot of his songs and riffs. He'll create these little slight movements somewhere, in the middle or top part of the chord, where you'll hear a note either go down or a note go up. But you'll find that a lot in this lesson too, where he kind of sneaks these little movements in his chords and chord progressions. Okay, up next is the rockin' verse section from White Wedding, which is from the Billy Idol, album, the self-titled debut. And, once again, he's kind of doing these little slight, changes in the chords, and he's also using his thumb for the opening. Something like this. Really cool. So that's basically a B minor 7 and then a B minor, or I'm sorry, B7 sus2 right there. So you can kind of think of that as like a partial A over B, but I'm relating that to that B chord. So you can think of it as a B7 sus2. And then right there, it's basically an A sus4. And then right here, really interesting. So that's like E7 sus4 and then a little piece of A over E. And I love the way the root note changes, you know, from A to E right there. Really cool, and I love, like I said, that movement, you know, when you hear that change. For a variation of this type of idea, check out the song Atomic Playboys from the album Atomic Playboys, and you'll see kind of a mutation to that White Wedding riff, something like this. Right there, it's an F sharp minor 7 instead of that B that we had up here, and he's not using his thumb down there. And then you're going to basically move from that, then it's an F7 sus2, and then you're basically sliding that partial A up to partial B right there. Right there, you're going to move to D, and that's basically a D sus2 right there. Really interesting. And right there, he kind of moves back to that partial. It's almost like a partial E right there, and then slide up to that partial B. But he also hits the open D in there too. Right there. Interesting. Another section from the same song from Atomic Playboys. This is kind of like a bridge, I guess. And he's playing these add 9 shapes, and he's also sliding back to an implied 7 sus2 chord. But it's the stretchy kind of slip and slide section. It's really cool, like this. Reminds me of Steve Vai or somebody, but one more time there. So there's like a B sus2, and then you're sliding back to that B7, or I'm sorry, a B add 9, and then you're sliding back to that implied B7 sus2, like this. So there's your B add 9. And you're sliding back from that E flat to D flat and grabbing that A right there, which is where the B7 kind of comes in. And then do the exact same thing down a whole step. Now do it in A, you know, A add 9, and then A7 sus2 right there. It's a good workout for your fret hand and your picking hand too, and it's musical and melodic and stretchy and slip and slide, all over the place, but a cool riff. For another riff that's going to mutate some of these ideas even further, check out the song You're Invited But Your Friend Can't Come from Vince Neil's Exposed album. And you'll see yet another variation of this type of riff, these kind of twisted, minor seventh based, shapes, and these little twisted partial chords and stuff, something like this. So right there, you're literally, kind of bashing your way into that F sharp, and it's F sharp minor 7 again. And it's a, partial, double stop or whatever, partial chord there, partial A, with that E and that A note, and then you're doing a partial F sharp right here with that C sharp and F sharp. So it's two, sets of double stops, but it's still part of that chord, technically. F sharp minor, or F sharp minor 7, but this. And then you're going to do this. So once you kind of hit those two double stops, then you've got single notes. And then right there, it's like a little piece of A sus4 to A major. And then do that first part again. And then it's a little piece of F sharp minor to E major. And then repeat all that again. Up next is the unusual and hybrid picked intro to Rebel Yell, and I did feature this in another episode of Chordplay. It was one of the I Love 80s Chords episodes. But this is a really unusual guitar part in a very famous song, so I wanted to feature this again. But it's this part. It's basically an implied B minor 7 again, and we're doing this kind of unusual hybrid picked idea where you're basically separating your fret hand into two parts, and you've got this, which is the bass part, and then you have this higher, D and A note there on the high E and the B string. And then you're combining that, you're just plucking that like crazy, combining that with that bass part. And that's basically the pattern. You're going to hit that B note and then pluck those top two strings, that double stop, 3 times like this. Do the same thing and grab that F sharp. And then grab A and pluck it once. And then grab B and pluck it once. And then do it again. One of those kind of like rub your tummy and pat your head or whatever kind of thing, where it's going to feel really unusual at first because you're technically doing 2 different things at the same time. But those kind of guitar parts are really good to work on. It kind of frees you up and challenges you, like in a really unusual way, like this. And then it moves into this, classic song though, and I like that intro part. It's really weird and unusual. Alright, the last example is very interesting. This is from the song Crackdown, which is from his solo album Atomic Playboys once again. And it's this kind of busy and challenging, there's some double picking in there, but it's this arpeggio based idea that follows a chord progression. And it reminds me of John Petrucci big time. And it's something like this. Or something like that. But it starts with this, and this is, really unusual. So this is going to be a C sharp minor sharp 5. And then you're basically, hitting this extension on the B string up there. So it's kind of moving from a C sharp minor sharp 5 to a C sharp minor add 9 sharp 5. With that little transition up there. And the double picking's actually taking place on that A note right there when you move up that arpeggio. You kind of hear it, on that A note right there. And then basically move that up a whole step, but you're going to modify the second half of that arpeggio ever so slightly. Like that. So that's D sharp minor sharp 5 right here. And then you're kind of flirting with D sharp minor sharp 5 flat 9 when you do this. Which is really, really weird. And then basically move this up and you're going to start here. Now you're playing F sharp minor sharp 5. And you're ending that with that F sharp minor add 9 sharp 5 like the first time, but you're up here. And then move that up a whole step and you're going to revert back to what we did a second ago. So now it's D sharp minor sharp 5. And then you're doing this implied G sharp minor sharp 5 flat 9 like that. So it's really interesting that you're seeing two different arpeggio forms and then you're seeing it relocate, higher on the fretboard too. So really slow, you're doing this. And then repeat all that again. And the last time he does this real frantic, it's kind of like just real super busy pick part up there, which is cool like that. Great double picking workout for sure. Alright, that's going to wrap this episode of the Chords of Steve Stevens, and I definitely, think he's a very dynamic and interesting guitarist, different ideas, definitely chord work and rhythm work, really unusual, and his lead work's really exciting too, very just different guitarist, not your standard kind of bag of tricks. He has some different tricks up his sleeve, which is really inspiring and kind of eye-opening, where it's like, hey, I've never seen, guitarists doing this, things like that before. And you can definitely pick up some stuff from Steve. So anyway, leave some feedback and some comments. Please subscribe to Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know with more content material. Thank you.